World Bank Group says it is working with Nigeria and other low and middle income nations to reconcile debt with creditors. Vaccine policy is economic policy, says the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. Federal government insists petroleum industry will be resolved. The oil sector's a 70-year underdevelopment. Court grants CBN's request to freeze 11 bank accounts under investigation. Plus, Australia jumps about 1%, leading gains as major Asia-Pacific markets mostly rise. This is Business Express, and we're reaching you from the network service of the NTA. My name is Leah Katun Babatunde. The federal government has, through the Debt Management Office, opened the April Savings Bond offer to investors. The DMO, while stating these on its 2-year and 3-year savings bond offers for subscription, said they are 2-year FGN bond due April 14, 2023 at 5.522% per annum and 3-year FGN savings bond due on April 14, 2024 at 6.522 points per annum. The bonds opened on April 6 with a closing date of April 9, while this settlement date is April 14 with coupon payment dates of July 14, October 14, January 14 and April 14. Now, World Bank's President David Malpass says the bank is working actively in collaboration with the IMF on the common framework that the G20 established for dealing with debt overhangs and debt burdens. Speaking at the opening of the 2021 spring meetings in Washington, D.C., Malpass said there is a call for the first creditor committee to be formed under the common framework in the deliberations this week.
Welcomed the acceleration of the IDA 20 process, and we're looking to complete it by December, which is important for the world's poorest countries because it's the World Bank's very effective platform to give concessional aid and grants to the poorest countries. There was endorsement of extending the DSSI, that's the debt suspension initiative, through the end of 2021, and quite a bit of conversation, strong support for transparency in terms of the debt contracts. There was also discussion of the common framework. The World Bank and IMF are working closely together to have successful implementation of the G20's common framework to deal with unsustainable debt situations.
The focus this spring is on vaccines, climate, debt, and recovery. And still from the spring meetings, the International Monetary Fund says the IMF spent nearly $300 billion in resuscitating the global economy when COVID-19 struck. Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, who stated this, said there are unorthodox noises being made at the top of the institution best known for austerity in public spending, while noting that the world was pitched into the most devastating health crisis in a century. Kristalina Georgieva added that jobs and outputs were eviscerated as the economic effects of COVID-19 passed from country to country like another contagion. Even as concerted efforts are being made to improve financial access across the country, the excluded population being targeted will not automatically understand how to harness the tools and opportunities at their disposal without proper education. This is our focus today, but first, Nneka Oko will give us this report.
An important mandate of the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) is the promotion of a sound financial system in the country. A key aspect of this function is the entrenchment of effective consumer protection regime that not only protect the rights of consumers but also engender public confidence in the financial system. Though there exist many educated and literate Nigerians, a high percentage of the population do not have the requisite skills to effectively manage their financial transactions and take advantage of the opportunities presented by the financial products and services to improve their well-being. Consumers of financial services have also been subjected to unethical practices from financial institutions, which could be attributed to their low level of financial literacy arising from their lack of knowledge of their rights and obligations in their relationships with the financial institutions. Experts say it is only when the vast majority of the Nigerian population is financially literate that they can participate in the formal financial system by becoming aware of and taking advantage of its opportunities. Getting financially included thereby contribute to the financial and economic development of Nigeria.
Joining me to speak more on financial literacy in an ever-changing world is Dr. J. Ugu, a financial literacy consultant. Doctor, you're welcome to Business Express.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, we're having a week long full of activities running from the economic to development, but then these discussions are mostly top-notch. Where is the lower cadre of the society in all of this when we talk about financial literacy? Do they really understand all what we're saying?
Most people do not understand what we're talking about, and then that's why the drive now is for financial inclusion. And one of the core pillars, the core drivers of financial inclusion is financial literacy. Now, financial literacy is when the individuals understand and are able to effectively use financial concepts for a sustainable financial living. So no matter what the government is doing, whether government is providing credit, whether government is providing loan, encouraging people to save, investment, if people do not understand these key concepts, there is no way they will be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And the truth be told that the government so far has made a lot of initiatives towards reviving the economy, towards promoting financial inclusion. But again, part of what the discussion we've had all through the week, even in the conference and the trainings we've had so far, is the fact that this information would need to go down to the grassroots in terms that they can understand, in ways they will be able to use it. Let me give you a practical example. So you have a woman in the village who is a farmer because of our agrarian economy, and then all she does is to farm her maize. Now, she doesn't understand the concept of saving in the sense of taking that money, putting it in a bank account, and then leaving it there for a period of time when she needs it to access it again. Now, she cannot access loans, she cannot access credits provided by government because, for instance, for you to be able to get those financial credits, you need to have like a bank transactions. So if she has not opened a bank account, which will always say that the gateway to financial inclusion is encouraging more individuals to have bank accounts. Okay, so if she has a bank account, she puts her money in there, saves it for a certain purpose, then you can even capture her in the economy, in the financial radar. You'll be able to say, okay, this set of people need assistance. When they do need the assistance and you provide it, you have a way to get across to them. Now, unfortunately, the problem we have currently is even when banks drive to expand financial inclusion by people opening more bank accounts, you find out that it is still the normal people, the same people who already have accounts.
Yes,
so you have an account with GT.
I wanted to ask you, is it a sort of trust issue or lack of knowledge?
Okay, it is a multifactorial, it's a multidimensional problem, but we're tackling it, and then we're speaking to authorities and telling them, one is the products would need to be produced in such a way that the individuals that is meant for can access it. Let me give you a typical example again. So a bank recruits a set of marketers and gives them, okay, a target of 1 billion. Do you understand? Now, the easiest way for that marketer or those marketers to raise 1 billion as per the target they've been given by the bank is to go to government agencies, to go to ministers, politicians, and all of that, and solicit for them to open an account and domicile their money with them. As against them now going to the rural communities, asking these people to open bank accounts with 1,000 naira, with 2,000 naira, with 5,000 naira. So you see that the way there's a structural problem, there is a product development and design problem. Then there is also a communication problem.
So let's take it now one at a time. When we say a product design problem, what does it mean?
Okay, now product design problem is if you're rolling out financial products, financial services for the general population. One of the things I keep telling policymakers is, one, we need to speak with the gatekeepers. I represent, the organized private sector. That's where I come from. Well, I work briefly with the public service, but now I'm fully in organized private sector. So the issue is most times, whether it's bank or the government that are coming up with policies, they do not usually get the organized private sector involved. Let me give you an example. We're in Abuja, and then you want to develop a credit program, whether it's the CBN, whether it's the Development Bank of Nigeria, or even individual banks. Have you gone to Wuse Market, for instance, and spoken to the Association of Traders in Wuse Market? Ask them, what is your problem with accessing bank services? What is your problem with accessing credit? How can we help you? So that they bring in contributions. They are the ones that wear the shoes. They know where it pinches. So if you get them involved, they will give you ideas. Go to the chambers of commerce all through the country. I work with them almost all the time. Now, get these people together, ask them what is the problem you have. Now, you can take feedback from them and get back to the office and now develop a solution that is fit for the problems you've identified. And even when I speak with entrepreneurs, that's the same thing I tell them. If you want to start a business, don't start a business off your head. You understand? When you have an idea of a business you want to start, you want to solve a problem, go to the people who have those problems. Study the problem, ask them questions. How do you want your bread delivered? Do you have a barbing salon within this community? Do you want a supermarket within this community? Where do you get your groceries from? Assuming you want to set up a supermarket within an estate. These are things you need to do. When you get the feedback, you can now go and start, based on that information, you can go and start looking for where to rent and then what to stock.
So this explains why most startups just crash as soon as they
most of them, because you have 2 million, you have 3 million, you have an idea in your head, you want to set up a business, you just go and put the money without doing that. I call it problem product pathway. Problem product pathway is a sustainable way of starting a business, which means you start from the problem before you go to the product. That's a pathway. What most people do is they do product problem pathway, which is the reverse. So you start with a product and then you start looking for a problem that will fit the product. By the time you do that, you find out that the product will be a mismatch for the problem. So the same thing is happening with our financial policy makers. So you want to start a loan. I've spoken with a lot of, I consult with a lot of government agencies. So I've spoken with them. You want to have an incentive, whether it's for export, whether it's for SMEs, whether it's for MSMEs. Now the criteria you bring are so much that the MSMEs cannot meet up with those criteria. So we have that there's 50 billion in CBN. We have that there's a 500 billion with DBN. Do you understand? But that money, year in, year out, they roll it over. The individuals, the businesses that are meant to access those funds cannot access them because you talk about collateral, you talk about a lot of things.
And the communication chain
and the
is
communication
broken.
barrier. So, but if, for instance, now, let's say, let me use practical examples. NISA is doing a lot of work in promoting sustainable credits to MSMEs. So if MSMEs are consulted, especially the gatekeepers, go to cooperatives and all these associations, speak to them, they can guarantee each other. For instance, if you want to give loan, I use because of our geographical location, you want to give loan to businessmen and call their community leaders or their association leaders and say, okay, we're giving you 100 million. Now, find your members that can access this money, but anybody that does not pay back will hold you responsible. That is the greatest collateral you have. Because when the person can give you land as collateral and abandon the land, and you may not be able to sell the land to recover your money. But if it is in an association, the association do thrift, they still give loans even though it's minimal, but they have a way of recovering the money and it's working for them. So what I'm saying is product design whether it is for financial services, whether it is as an entrepreneur, you want to do a business, first consult with your stakeholders, the intended clients. Consult with them. The chambers of commerce are there. The trade associations, the trade organizations are there. Consult with them. Before you finish, ask them, what do you want? This is what we're planning to do. How do you want it? Because you're cooking for them. If you're cooking for me, for instance, now in a home, I'm sure if you're cooking for your husband, most times you ask your husband, sweetheart, what do you want? How do you want your soup? You don't just because you know how to cook, go to market and buy anything. You may come back and that's not what the man wants. Okay, so that's product design. Let's consult with the stakeholders, with the gatekeepers, even with the normal individuals on the streets.
Now, the normal individuals, these individuals, I wouldn't know if it still boils down to lack of knowledge or lack of trust. Because you have the people who would tell you, I don't want to join cooperative, they will use my name to collect money and to not reach me. We've had people say that.
That's true. Yes, that's true.
How do we describe that?
Okay, so again, we've talked about product design. There is trust in the system, which is very, very important. And then there is awareness. So let me just quickly talk about this two before we go forward. Now, trust in the system is the fact that if I make an investment, I get my returns. If I put my money in the bank, when I go to get the money, the bank should still be existing and I should be able to get my money. You understand? Not that today 2 banks collapsed, tomorrow 3 banks collapsed and all that. So that erodes trust in the system. So, if they are cooperatives, they are regulated by agencies of government. You understand? Of course, you cannot say that everybody is 100% honest and then has integrity. There are still a few things. So that's why that regulatory mechanism by the agencies of government is important to make sure that if you put your money here, you're able to get your money. If something happens, there's a redress mechanism. And in the training, in the conference we did with the Federal Minister of Finance, all the stakeholders were available. We discussed in details about this. Regulatory mechanisms, complaint mechanisms, customer redress mechanisms. So those things are important so that people are sure, people have confidence in the financial system.
Okay, so before I let you go now, you just mentioned your meeting with the policymakers, now those that work for the government.
Yes.
So where is the convergence point between the private sector and the public sector in ensuring that financial literacy works for every Nigerian?
Okay, so that's where we now get into awareness. And then getting everybody involved. So when you have a good product design, you have trust in the system, you look at awareness. Now, what awareness will do is you also need strategic partnerships and strategic communication. Now, what it means is if government is coming up with a policy which they have designed properly, the way to communicate it must be in a strategic way. Why strategic? Because you need to deliver certain results. I give you an instance. A lot of times, governments spend a lot of money advertising programs on TV, on radio, all that. But you see that most of our population now are on social media. So that's strategic. If you want to get the youths, you get to social media. If you want to get, like I've talked about traders, instead of just printing flyers, making adverts on newspaper, why don't you delegate 1, 2, 3 staff, go to the association. The association address the executives, give them the information, and then give them a mandate to pass that information down to their members. We did it a lot during COVID-19. You understand? When we're doing awareness, and it worked so well. So I'm not saying traditional media is not okay, but we must also communicate strategically. Get the leaders, the stakeholders, the gatekeepers of every community you want to reach, every organization you want to reach. Talk to them, let it now trickle down. Why you do the general.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Dr. J, for coming on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the US dollar traded near more than 2 weeks through, though versus major peers on Thursday, tracking Treasury yields lower after minutes of the Federal Reserve's March policy meeting offered no new catalyst to dictate market direction. Let's now see how the Naira is exchanging for other currencies. Now on surviving COVID-19 this morning, we bring to you this very special report on a shoemaker, Emmanuel Timothy.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Actually, I passed out from secondary school 2008. So immediately after the pass out, so I have nobody to sponsor me. So I decided to go into shoemaking, and I like it. I'm the one that put myself into the work. So thank God I'm gradually doing it to this level now. Even though I don't see anybody to help me, I didn't look at anybody. I just the hustle on my own. That is how it is. So you can see what I'm doing. Instead of industrial machine, I'm using manual because there's no money to upgrade. One of my friends told me, but I didn't believe because I've tried many loan of a thing, but I didn't get any result out of it. So that I decided to not to even listen to any of those loan of a thing. So I decided to work on my own to survive. Wow, I'll be happy. I'll be able to possess industrial machines, big generator, and stamping machine and other tools to enable this work to go far more than this. Okay. Sometimes I make 2,000, 3,000 upward like that. It depends how the work is. That's how it is.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Now, markets have picked up after the Easter holiday, both in Nigeria and away from home. In Australia, of course, the market jumped by about 1%, leading gains as major Asia-Pacific markets also rise. Let's join Boss Day Abel for a look at global markets.
European stocks opened higher Thursday, tracking gains overnight in the Asia-Pacific markets following a rise in the U.S. stock futures. The pan-European stock 600 gained 0.35% as at the start of trading, with basic resources adding 1% to lead the way as all sectors except travel and leisure eked out gains. The positive start for European stocks came after similarly upbeat momentum in Asia Pacific overnight, boosted by U.S. trading. DAX rose 0.29%, FTSE 0.29%, and CAC 40 also topped 0.4%. Stocks in Asia Pacific mostly rose in Thursday trading after the S&P 500 nudged higher to a record closing high overnight. The moves on Wall Street came as the U.S. Federal Reserve released minutes from its March meeting, during which it kept its accommodative policy in place. Mainland Chinese markets were higher by the afternoon. The Shanghai Composite gained 0.08%. Hang Seng Index advanced 1.26%, while the Nikkei in Japan slipped 0.07%. Futures contracts tied to the major U.S. stock indices ticked higher at the start of the overnight session Wednesday evening, suggesting that Wall Street could extend gains that have propelled the S&P 500 to record levels this week. Futures tied to the broad equity index rose about 0.25%, while Nasdaq 100 contracts added a similar 0.3%. Dow Jones futures rose 37 points. For Africa's stocks, South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 posted gains. Namibia's overall index depreciated, while others are yet to resume trading as at the time of this report. Bossade Able, Business Express.
And of course, this is where we end this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us, so do send in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. And don't forget to use the hashtag BizExp. Business Express returns Friday at 3 p.m. I am Leah Katun. Baba Tunde.